Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today we have another awful performance by the Vikings to talk about. So that's what Drew and I are going to do today. We're basically going to feed right into your panic because I think I'm right there with you. The Vikings obviously coming off of a 28-11 shellacking at Lucas Oil Stadium against the Indianapolis Colts. Kirk Cousins was a dumpster fire. The offensive line was not great. The defense continued to have issues. So we'll go into each one of those elements and try to find something to look forward to for the rest of this year. I know we're only 2 weeks in, but I just said to Drew before we started recording here, I think it's really time to panic, and I have no issue with anyone that's got a severe problem with this team right now, which I'm sure we will get into. So that's the game plan for today. I expect this to be a relatively short episode, relative to our standard, that is, but we'll see how this goes. So um, let's get it started here with the quarterback, as we typically do following, a Vikings game. And, of course, that's Kirk Cousins, who really put together one of his most memorable performances against the Colts this weekend. 11 for 26 shooting, 113 for yards. That's an average of 4.3 if you're counting. 3 interceptions. I'll give him a break for one of them because it was a Hail Mary, but 3 interceptions on the stat sheet. A 9.3 QBR, a 15.9 quarterback rating. And I don't care how much you buy into stats, none of those sound good. So, Drew, what are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins specifically as it pertains to this Vikings performance yesterday?
Yeah, this is bad, and I hope he understands that this has to be the worst start of his career, right? Has to be, and there's a million different ways I can go with this and sort of express what I'm frustrated about. Straight up, he was inaccurate. Like part of it was uncharacteristic of him because he's generally accurate throwing the ball when he has a platform to throw off with, which I think most of the time yesterday was the case. I don't think the offensive line was that bad. There's a couple times
Relative to the
interior where
circumstances, at least, it wasn't
right
that bad.
interior. DeForest Buckner got home a couple times through the interior, but I think the tackles held up pretty well yesterday. I thought Reef and O'Neal. So it's just maybe does Stephon Diggs matter that much? I mean, that's another question maybe for after the Kirk Cousins discussion maybe, but my word, he was super inaccurate. He doesn't look comfortable throwing to anybody besides Thielen, and it's pretty easy to, I mean, I don't care who your defensive backs are. If you put 2 or 3 guys on a receiver, it's going to be tough for that guy to get open.
Unless you're Calvin Johnson. You have to
right,
literally Calvin Johnson.
You can bracket him, you can do whatever kind of deal, but if you pay extra attention to one receiver and there's not another option that's reliable besides that guy, it's difficult to difficult to move the ball down the field passing. So, and that's not I 100% I'm not trying to excuse Kirk, but clearly he's built this chemistry with Thielen, has not done so with any of the other receivers yet. And again, the accuracy for whatever reason was awful. I mean, both of those, well, the 2 interceptions you did not mention, you mentioned the Hail Mary. The one down the field, that was just a deep shot, right? And double coverage Thielen, probably ill-advised, but definitely pressing at that point right in the game. And then the throw was a little bit behind BC on that little kind of slant route, but placement should definitely be better there. And there was other issues in placement that I think there's maybe 1 or 2 more balls that should have been intercepted probably. So this is clearly the worst I've ever seen Kirk Cousins play in a Vikings uniform, and probably the worst he's ever played in the National Football League. I think this loss begins with him. And then I think it's not the case as last week, right? Last week it was the offense on a small sample size was solid, just a couple plays here and there that really changed the outcome. This week the offense was horrible throughout the game, could not sustain a drive. Quickly got into the 3rd and long situation. I don't really have any words. My thoughts on this game, I'm quickly turning from, okay, how can the Vikings win week to week, to, wow, this plan the Vikings have to win long term, or they don't really, the fact they don't have one. They don't have a plan long term. And that's what's so discouraging about this is the Vikings, their plan is to win now, or at least that's what it would seem, and they are absolutely not doing that. And I don't see a win on the schedule in the near future.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here with Kirk Cousins' performance, right? Like the numbers say it's bad, but it was so much worse than even the numbers say. Like
It rivaled Josh Freeman in 2013. It seriously did, and that is some, depending on how you look at it, some either elite or awful company to be in.
So when we talk about quarterbacks, right, we always talk about how the reason why we attribute wins and losses to the quarterback position is because of the impact they have on the game. Now, most of the time, we're talking about the positive impacts that quarterbacks can have on a game, right? We're always talking about, well, if you have a good quarterback, you can hide so many deficiencies. Like Russell Wilson can hide his offensive line. Tom Brady has been hiding bad receivers for years. I mean, it's so easy if you have a great, I'm using a relative term. If you're a great quarterback, it's so, quote, easy to hide these mistakes. Now, we never talk about what happens when your quarterback really, really sucks and it kneecaps your entire team. That's what Kirk Cousins did yesterday. I've got a real problem with that because he went from being, some people calling him a game manager, right? Which, okay, I kind of disagree with that. I think he's closer to a gunslinger than a game manager. Yesterday, he went from being a game manager to a game destroyer. Literally, like he completely hindered the Vikings' chances throughout the game. Whether it was the fact that he was throwing inaccurate passes like Drew was talking about, or it was the fact that he was straight up afraid to throw into tight coverage. That Jay Gruden quote, which I thought was hilarious at the time, it's not funny anymore. It's real. Like, you bring up the point, okay, it looks like he doesn't have chemistry with his other wide receivers. Now, we can give him a little bit of a leash on that, right? Because he didn't have a full off season, not a really fair circumstances to evaluate the
right.
off season.
But every other quarterback didn't have the off season either.
Right.
So
right.
Why is he having such, why is it so tough for him to get acclimated with these receivers? But other quarterbacks around the league are, it's tougher for sure than normal, but they're clearly doing it better than he is.
And okay, so it's not just that Kirk Cousins played poorly. He also played poorly in a week when you absolutely couldn't have that. We talked about it leading up to this game. You made kind of the bold statement that week one was a must-win for the Vikings because of the implications that losing to a division rival, especially probably the team that's the favorite to win the division, has on your remaining schedule. Okay, so if week one was a, quote, must-win, week two after losing that game, I don't care if it's an AFC opponent, you need to get on the board. Mike Zimmer's never been 0-2 with the Vikings ever, right? You heard that stat said enough times yesterday, I'm sure. This puts the Vikings in a horrible, horrible position. You've now lost to your bitter rival and a team that just lost to the Jaguars. You lost to Phillip Rivers, who was trying to throw interceptions in this game, and you wouldn't let him have them, with exception to Eric Wilson finally getting his hands on one, deep in the red zone there, which was really one of the few bright spots in the game. And then we can go all day about Kirk Cousins' relationship with Adam Thielen. I don't think Thielen is playing poorly. His release looked good off the line of scrimmage. He's doing his absolute best to get open facing double coverage or, as you said, bracket coverage with a safety over the top. And that's supposed to open up one-on-one for someone else, right? If you're running 2 and 3 wide receiver sets and you got a safety shading over the top of Adam Thielen just to take him out of the game, just throw the ball to B.C. Johnson. Throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. Throw it to Irv Smith, but not 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Throw the football. This is on Kirk. This is a deficiency of just tremendous magnitude that he doesn't understand that it's never going to be perfect. This is the NFL. Windows close in a millisecond. You have to fit it in there. You have to try. At the very least, you got to try. And you might say, well, he did try. He threw deep to Adam Thielen. Well, that was an ill-advised try, as to use Drew's terminology. It was a try where it's like, okay, if you look at the field in that situation, I understand you've only got 3 seconds to scan the field, Kirk, and probably even less with this offensive line. But if you're going to throw that ball, can't you just check the other side of the field to see for single coverage and try that throw instead? Justin Jefferson's a first-round pick for a reason. I mean, B.C. Johnson, you played with him last year. You know what he can do. I don't understand what the issue is here. Throw the ball to someone else. Jefferson ended up leading the Vikings in receiving because he was wide ass open the entire game. It's embarrassing. It's straight up embarrassing to employ a quarterback who's going to hit the cap at $41 million next year. And he's afraid to throw into single coverage and a tight window. Dude, that's just not good. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, Jay Gruden said it, man. Like, it's impossible for someone to scheme someone wide open on every single play. It's not going to happen.
He's definitely hesitant, right? And that is leading to some of these sacks. For sure, the safety again, the Colts game, right?
Oh my God! That's
the
3
safety.
games in a row with the safety now.
Yes.
What are you doing? At some point, it's not just on the play call. Like, I'm not taking blame away from Gary Kubiak because I think his play calling has been questionable at best through 2 weeks, especially with those long developing plays in the red zone. Or excuse me, not the red zone, our red zone. So backed up against the line there. But Kirk, like, you have the ability to change the play if you see a blitzer, and you may not have seen Jair Alexander. We talked about that, a gamble play, whatever. But you got to see it this time.
Yep.
You just had it happen last week. Can we learn from the mistake?
Well, in this one, it seemed like the pass protection I thought was good, right? Like, he had time to throw, to make a decision, to get the ball out of the end zone one way or another, whether it meant him moving with his legs or throwing the ball elsewhere. And for whatever reason, he basically, if I remember correctly, like, ran into or stumbled into his own lineman. And instead of booking it out of there, kind of tried to make a hero play, look down the field one more time before he was eaten up by Colts players. And so my takeaway on this, I'm sort of done with this season. Like, as bad as that sounds and as pessimistic and as irrational as that might sound, I'm sort of done with it because I don't see a win on the schedule in the near future, to be quite honest. Okay, Tennessee, Houston, Seattle, Chicago, whatever it is, at Chicago, mind you, I don't see anything happening soon. And so at that point, you start looking ahead to past 2020, and maybe I'm hoping things get turned around and this will be, cold takes exposed, whatever. But there's no plan B for the Vikings. Like, they can't, they're committed to Kirk. Like, his contract isn't all guaranteed, but it kind of is guaranteed through 2022. They just extended Mike Zimmer as head coach. They have extended Rick Spielman, which that's a little different because of, his drafting history. He's hit some solid picks there. But basically, you're saying, okay, this is what our core right now, what we've got. We like it for 3 seasons. The first 2 games of that regime for another 3 seasons, awful luck. And the scoreboard in both games is a lot closer than it should have been. Right? Both
it's not indicative of the performance at all.
Right. Packers and Colts in both games. If there's a positive, I feel like red zone defense might be a positive because teams are moving the ball at will, and then the Vikings are able to get a few stops and force field goals.
Yeah.
Neither of these games are close. There's one clear better team than the other. Vikings are getting destroyed, and I don't see a solution other than speed up time 3 years when Cousins is presumably gone. Zimmer's probably not head coach anymore because, like I said earlier today, I think on Twitter, if you're going to stick to a defensive head coach, which they extended Mike Zimmer, if you're going to stick to a defensive head coach in the NFL in 2020, that defense better be elite. That is how you can win. Because look at these recent Super Bowl winning teams, Denver 2015, right? You can make a case for Philly in 2017. You can make a case for New England getting there a couple years ago. Yeah. If you're going to keep a defensive head coach, and for what it's worth, the Eagles didn't even have a defensive head coach. Doug Peterson is their guy. But if you're going to focus on defense, that's going to be your identity. It better be elite because as you can see now, having an elite quarterback is a far easier way to win football games. And finding that guy, drafting that guy, grooming that guy for the future. Vikings didn't do that. They went the other way, tried to go the Flacco Ravens route, and their defense is the worst in the league. So there's just no hope. And something needs to change now, or I've already thrown in the towel. So it's at this point, it's kind of I'm never gonna wish that Mike Zimmer's fired. I will never do that because I like Zimmer too much. But the focusing on defense, it better be a very good defense if that's going to be the identity of your team, and that's certainly Zimmer's identity.
So to wrap it up with Kirk Cousins, and then we can talk about the rest of the offense here and the defense, as you just made note of, which
Yeah,
also
I jumped
was
all
not
over the map
particular.
on that one, but
I'm cool with that. I mean, there's a lot of places to go here. I mean, the one point that I want to make with Kirk here is, I think for me personally, and I think that I've been very rational with Kirk Cousins. I've rode the roller coaster, I don't know what the verb is there. I've been on the roller coaster with Kirk since he got here, and I've been pretty rational. I feel like I've given, optimistic takes. I've been pessimistic. I've been very flat line about how I feel about Kirk Cousins, right? This to me is the straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't think I'm panicking too early. I don't think that's an irrational take. That's now a 33 game sample size that you have from Kirk Cousins so far in Minnesota, right? The best game was pretty great, right? The game-winning touchdown to Kyle Rudolph against the Saints, pretty awesome stuff. But I think that's the ceiling now. Is, a very lucky play that probably could have been called a offensive pass interference. Like, that seems like Kirk Cousins' ceilings to me. I don't see him. I no longer think he has the potential to win a Super Bowl. I think that he is the problem. He is the sole, there are issues on defense, but I think those issues could be covered up with better quarterback play.
Well, see, the issue, and that I think a lot of people have had a question about, and it's sort of been that sort of that lingering thought in everybody's mind, and some Vikings fans have been willing to sort of confront this more than others, is that Kirk has seemingly needed things to be really great around him, right? That has seemed to be why Kirk has played well, is when a lot of play action is used, and Stephon Diggs can get wide open down the field, and Dalvin Cook is running the ball really well. That type of thing can carry him along. And now, first of all, we're seeing the value of Stephon Diggs.
I think Josh Allen is too, by the way.
Yes, that too. And so you take away Diggs, a superstar receiver, and we've seen, in the past, Thielen's production when he's got that attention on him without Diggs has not been awesome in his career. We're seeing that now, and the situation is not as perfect. It's not as great for Kirk Cousins, and he sort of has to create a little bit more on his own. Certainly didn't work well.
To do that.
Doesn't.
I don't think it's
not a trait he has. It's not the it factor that he has, and so somehow, some way, Kubiak has his work seriously cut out for him, because it's going to basically be, to me, up to him to get super creative to make things easier for Kirk. Because that, I think, is, and it's insane to say that about a quarterback making the money that Kirk is. But again, it's like, I say this with good intent. Kirk is exceptional when the script is working. He will execute a script to perfection, and he's better at it than most quarterbacks in the league. But when that script is not awesome, which has been the case with Kubiak, things can go downhill quickly. So it's a very fine line there. And so it sucks that the responsibility falls on Kubiak in this instance, but I do think some of it does, just because of the way Kirk Cousins plays.
Absolutely. The last note that I'll make on Cousins is that people have been, since he's arrived in Minnesota, and really since he was in Washington, people have given him a hard time for prime time, right? And just for pressure situations in general. They say, Kirk doesn't handle pressure well. Okay, I think that is a little bit off, right? I don't think it's the pressure that does it to him. He just doesn't get it done when it matters. Because this isn't a high-pressure game, right? This is a Week 2 AFC opponent, right? But it mattered to the Vikings, right? In terms of team morale, in terms of us as a fan base, being involved and being optimistic about the season, this game really mattered. And Kirk completely shit the bed. He's been doing, it's not a pressure thing to me. It's just when you need him most, he does not get it done. That's not okay with me as a fan. And as someone that likes to think he can analyze football pretty well, that seems like a pretty important trait to be missing on when you're paying a guy $40 million, right? I mean, it's not when the pressure's on, it's when the team needs you. When the team needs you to step up, you got to be there, right? You have to do it. Kirk has never done that.
And it's the perfect tease, because the Saints game last year with the Thielen throw, the perfect tease. Hey, you know what? Maybe this guy can do it. And that is why, that little glimpse of hope was enough for the Vikings brass to all right, here's your extension. Zimmer, because you bought into Kirk as well, you get an extension as well. Like that, just that little bit of tease. I mean, and I saw this idea floating around a little bit on Twitter, and I will never fully agree to this, but people are saying like, long term, that win against the Saints was actually a bad for the Vikings franchise. I will never subscribe to that completely and say, well, playoff wins are actually bad, but
right.
There's a point to be that's that to be made there, and that's that.
If the
that
goal
win,
is that, if the goal is the Super Bowl,
right.
that win prohibited the Vikings' chances more so than had
in the long run. In the long run,
right?
yes, just because now that sort of confirmed that they're going to extend Zimmer, they're going to extend Kirk. Remember, there was those rumors about is Zimmer going to be fired if they don't make the playoffs or win a playoff game, whatever it was. They won that playoff game. Zimmer's gets another 3 years, and it is off to a rough start in his what you would expect at this point is his final 3 years or less as Vikings head coach.
Okay, so we've done a number on Kirk here, but he's not he's not the only one at fault for this offensive performance, right? Let's look at the rest of this unit. Dalvin Cook, 14 for 63 and a touchdown. Basically garbage time stats for the most part. That touchdown was in the fourth quarter and didn't matter at all. Justin Jefferson led in receiving with 3 catches, 3 of them, and 44 yards, and Thielen behind him at 3 for 31.
Thielen's 3 catches were all in the first drive, and then shut out after that. So,
right? Okay, so
there's nothing else to take away. I think. I mean, okay, the one take Drew Samia, probably not NFL caliber guard, probably not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. That's one thing to take away.
It can get worse than Pat Elflein. It can
confirmed, yes. But other than that, I don't see a lot of blame to be passed around. I thought the offensive line, at least on the bookends, Reef and O'Neal were solid or reliable or at the very least serviceable. And I guess I haven't looked at the all 22 to see how if the separation Jefferson or BC was getting down the field or Thielen for that matter. So I don't have the expertise on that, but I don't know. It just seems like the third down offense for Minnesota is not working, and that probably is contributing or happening because first and second down aren't great, and they're in third and long situations. So I don't know. The offense, again, a lot of it is going to boil down to the quarterback, and we covered Kirk very well already. So
I just even if this team were to get into the postseason, right? Like let's say they go on a run here and 9-7.
12%, by the way, 12% of teams at 0-2 get so.
There you go. Okay, so let's say the Vikings go on a run here. They go 9-7. They get that extra wild card spot and sneak in, right? Okay, let's say that happens. Now, do you trust this team to run the table and not have a stinker just randomly out of absolutely nowhere, completely unforeseen? Because I don't. It's not just Kirk. It's the rest of the offense, too. Like, Dalvin Cook could get hurt. He always seems to get hurt. I know that hasn't happened. Knock on wood hard. But do you trust this team to stay consistently good for 3 or 4 games in the postseason when it matters the most? No.
Against the best teams in the conference.
Right. I'm out. So for those reasons that we've discussed, I'm out. I don't see it with this team. I don't. The offense isn't good enough to cover up the defense. So let's talk about the defense now, who just lost Anthony Barr, by the way. And I know that we throw a shade at Anthony Barr for not playing up to his salary, but that's a big loss nonetheless. He does a ton for this defense in terms of where he's positioned on the field, and the guys around him kind of line up in as kind of like Anthony Barr is the centerpiece in the middle of the defense, right? Harrison Smith is moved around, and Eric Kendricks are moved around as a result of where you place Anthony Barr a lot of the time. So this is important. And also, it puts Troy Dye on the field, who we've seen what the rookies for the Vikings have done so far. I don't trust that Troy Dye is going to be any better or any more prepared than the guys that have already been on the field. Cameron Dancer was inactive yesterday. What in the hell is that? I don't that's another blow to this team's chances of anything successful. You look at the defense and the way they played yesterday. They were basically bend but don't break, which you can win with that. I'm not saying it's impossible. Generally, with that type of defense, you need to score 30 points to do so. But, okay, you get a couple sacks. Ngakoue finally got his sack fumble. Of course, the Vikings didn't recover it because that's the luck for the Vikings, right? And he got a sack from Holton Hill, and then Eric Kendricks played his thing. But, other than that, Harrison Smith was out of position on 2 or 3 plays downfield that the Colts didn't beat the Vikings on. They could have.
The
Like
TY drop in the end zone.
Oh my God. Yeah, like it was either Anthony Harris or Harrison Smith was out of position there, and Harrison Smith was running to cover it up, and Anthony Harris was in the wrong spot. Someone was in the wrong place, and both those guys are making over $10 million a year. So, hey, figure it out, right? Like I don't like to be the guy that's like, it's easy to be an armchair GM, right? And it's easy to sit here and be like, well, Eric Kendrick should have been here. Harrison Smith should have been here. Kirk Cousins should have been looking at this side of the field. It's easy to do all that stuff, but like they don't even look prepared. They're out of position a lot of the time.
That would go back to the coaching staff if they're not prepared.
And I think that they have a piece in this too. I mean, I think it's more Kubiak than Zimmer right now because I just don't think that Kubiak and Kirk are in sync. And I also think that Kubiak is maybe a little dated, or at least it seems that way through 2 weeks.
It does.
I'm not saying he can't win games. I'm saying that his play calling style doesn't look good through 2 weeks.
Just seems like his concepts have been, weeded out, right? Like defensive play callers have sort of figured that part out. But there's I don't have the research or the knowledge or the expertise. I haven't dug deep enough into it to know if that's true or not. But clearly, Danielle Hunter, I feel bad for him because the guy has to miss 3 weeks, and this is the performance that his teammates are throwing out on the field. But the frustrating part, Anthony Barr, that sucks. The injury for the torn pec. I'll always appreciate Anthony Barr for turning down more money to go play for the Jets and instead taking less to play for Minnesota again. I for what it's worth, I appreciate Kirk for the same reason. But the frustrating part is clearly the Vikings, again, they're trying to win now in at least some capacity. This isn't a rebuild, because if it was a rebuild, Mike Zimmer probably wouldn't be the head coach. You probably don't, extend Kirk Cousins and you let them play out their last years, or which would have been 2020, the last year of their deals. But instead, even when Hunter goes down, you've traded for a star pass rusher for a 1-year deal. That is the most win now move you can make. And that's what everybody, any way you look at that move, if you're rebuilding, why would you make that deal? Give up a pick or picks, whatever it was, and grab this pass rusher when you have younger guys that you need to see, you need to develop. And so that's the frustrating part. Now he showed up against the Colts, but that's frustrating because the performance in the field, specifically against the run now too. I mean, Jonathan Taylor got what he wanted. I mean, I don't know how many carries he had on that
26.
first drive, but it was he had like 10 or 12 on that first drive, and every one of them went for 4 yards, it seemed like. And so there's nowhere to, I'm almost at a loss because I don't even know where to start. And then I don't want to talk too much more about this game. Like it's
depressing, man. It's not like we are very.
It's one thing if the rebuild, like the safety net was there for a rebuild, right? Like that's why I'm at a loss, is because like it's one thing like if you do it Miami's way, right? Where like, okay, well, you know what? We're losing games. We have a plan, and we can flip to the rebuild mode if we want to. The Vikings do not have that at all. There is no way out for multiple years. They can't, if they wanted to rebuild, they'd have to wait several years to even start that process. That's the part of this that is frustrating. Like, I don't care. Like, if you want to rebuild, fine. You know what? Do it. Like that. It's working for teams clearly. You go in there, you get your quarterback, you start over. If that quarterback hits, then it's not that long before you're competitive again, right? That's the part that is, I think, the most upsetting for, I think, Vikings fans are going to notice, is that you're locked into Kirk probably through 2022 unless something outrageous happens. You're locked into Mike Zimmer unless, I don't know what the clauses look like or what happened for him to be terminated on that contract. I'm not sure. But you extend those guys. Okay, you're like, okay, this is our team. This is what we can win with right now. And they don't have a plan B. They don't have a plan B. And so that is why it's so kind of upsetting, and I'm at a loss. I don't know what to say, because you put this team together, you buy into what they have, and it's just they're the worst. Like, they are literally the worst team in the league right now. They haven't even ran 100 plays yet on offense in 2 games, right? that's like 20, at least 20. I saw the chart today, at least 20 lower than any other team. That's just because they never have the ball because they can't stop anybody. And when they do have the ball, they can't extend a drive. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea when or how the Vikings will become competitive again. There's just, I don't see a roadmap any way how they can in the next 3 years. There's no plan in place, no plan that can be created for that to happen. I don't get it.
And if someone's got a plan, by the way, I'd like to shake your hand, because I don't think that we're, I think to a degree everyone that watched this football game is going to be reactionary, right? You're going to look at that, you're going to say, okay, if this is the Vikings, we're screwed, right? And you've got 2 games for a sample size. I think it's fair to be a little reactionary and to be, I think panic is fair right now. I really do. You're 0-2, like you said, 12% of teams in the old playoff format actually made the postseason. Like, you've already depleted like a lot of your chance to even get there, to make this season worth it, right? And now, like you said before, the schedule, like, they're going to lose next week to Tennessee for sure. That game probably won't even be close. Derrick Henry is going to run it down the Vikings' throat.
Imagine Derrick Henry against this defensive, this run defense right now. Now, I think we're sort of leaning towards wrapping up right now. We didn't cover a ton of the defense, but I don't really feel like touching more on it.
This is a
if there's one piece of optimism to look at, right? If there's one, I still don't buy the NFC North as being good. Even Green Bay, I don't buy them. And Chicago, I don't know who they beat. What, Detroit and the New York Giants? Good for you. The Packers beat really bad, clearly a bad Minnesota team, and Detroit. Nice, good for you. And I think overall in the NFC, you're seeing the Niners have a bunch of injuries. Like, that sucks, but bunch of injuries now. The Saints are out without Michael Thomas, and I still I think the Saints are due for regression a little bit as well. Dallas does not appear to be that good. The loss to the Rams and then a miracle win against the Falcons. So, like, basically what I'm saying is I think the NFC is still wide open enough, including the NFC North, that the Vikings can scrap together something. It's not going to take some miracle run out of nowhere like maybe it did in 2017 or 2015 even to make the playoffs. I think 8 wins could easily earn a playoff spot, whether that's winning the division at 8-8 or becoming a 7 seed at 8-8. So, that's the only optimism I can think of right now. But everything else is just it's depressing and sad, and there's no way out for a long time. So that's I guess that's a fun way to conclude the show. I don't know if we're there yet, but I have nothing else to add besides that.
Okay, I will conclude it on this statement right here, right? So I generally consider myself, not just in football, but in life, to be an optimist, right? I think I have a pretty positive attitude toward things, and I do a pretty good job laughing things off when it's just not that important, right? The Vikings yesterday, I reached, and for this story, it's important to note, I'm 28 years old, right? I'm relatively young on the scale of human age, right? Yesterday, I sincerely questioned for the first time, am I going to die without a Viking Super Bowl? Again, I'm 28 years old, right? I theoretically have 50 more years plus to live. And I'm this one really hurt. I'm for those of you who like felt like tremendous fan pain on this one, like, I'm with you. Because like that was just so.
It's like even 2011, or 2013, like, it was, you could see the way out, sort of, like,
right. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Like you can just draft a quarterback the next year, with Ponder. Like, you can just try and draft your quarterback the next year, or whatever the case is. Like, you're paying Kirk however many million, like that 35 or 45 million cap hit in 2022, that becomes guaranteed at the third day of the 2021 league year, which is this March.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. So there's not a way out of this for a while. So it's kind of like,
just to extend off of that real quick. So I know that there's people listening right now that are like, please draft, tank all the way, draft Trevor Lawrence, right? There's someone's thinking that.
There's a lot of people thinking that. There's a lot of people.
Okay. So let's say they do that, right? The number one benefit of a rookie quarterback, right? The salary cap relief. If the Vikings were to draft Trevor Lawrence next year, that luxury is gone. You still got to pay Kirk Cousins $40 million. Your salary cap doesn't get that benefit. Like, You might have Trevor Lawrence, but we're still talking about 4 years down the road before you can rebuild. Like, there is no immediate out. To echo all of Drew's points, like there is no immediate solution to this unless everyone just gets better. Which
Yeah.
that's the only solution
that's
here.
Solution.
And I mean, maybe the cornerbacks can get better. They're young, they're talented, they can get better. I don't think the quarterback can get better. I'm sorry, I'm out on Kirk Cousins. This is my day. This is, I've done 33 games of this guy. I've seen the ups and downs. I've seen who he is as a quarterback. This game is going to continue to happen. It's going to happen again. I know it's going to happen again because it's happened several times before. Hell, it's happened against the Colts before. This is going to happen again, and I'm tired of it. Okay, this is just, it's completely demoralizing as a fan and as a football analyst. How can you look at this game and find any sort of positive other than, Dalvin Cook is still a talented running back? I mean, that touchdown run was pretty nice, right? He had to break a couple tackles. He weaved it inside and out. There's some things that you can look at and be like, all right, there's a redeemable reason to watch these guys on TV right now. But they're not winning a Super Bowl this year, and they're probably not doing it next year, and they're probably not doing it after that, unless literally, there's 22 starters. There's probably 10 more guys that rotate in. I want to say 23 of them have to get way better for this team to have a chance to compete for a playoff position right now. That's where I'm at, and I don't think that's overreacting. So that's it. That's all I got. I'm pissed. I'm with you guys. This is not like, this isn't fun anymore. Football's supposed to be fun. It's going to get worse this week. That's where I'm at. I mean, we'll see what the preview episode holds, but that's where both Drew and I are at.
What a great promotion for the show later this week. You know what?
Yeah.
Hey, we hate the Vikings. They stink. But listen to us next week to see how they can win against the Titans, or probably don't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think that this podcast has any promotional value right now because of the team that we cover. I'm sorry. But the thing is, though, the only benefit to us, the reason we continue doing this show probably is because, well, one, we have to. We're under contract. But number two, Vikings fans love this shit. I love being mad at this team. It makes me feel better when I know they're bad and I'm right. It makes me feel better. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed listening to Drew and I rant about all of the, probably the sentiments that all of us were feeling yesterday. Hopefully you kind of feel a little bit seen, because it's not just you. This is all of Minnesota. And dude, panic all you want. I'm normally a proponent to say, hey, let's wait a couple weeks. I'm not ready to wait. We're 2 weeks in. I'm ready to fold. So we'll cover the Titans on the next episode. We'll go into the ways the Vikings could potentially win. But again, I mean, this is disaster mode right now. There's something drastic has to happen. And I just don't see it happening. So to conclude a very depressing episode of the Unbelievable Podcast, thank you guys for listening to this show, and hopefully you'll continue listening after this. And if you want to continue listening, make sure you find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, etc. We're on YouTube too if you want to watch us there, and make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket Network and on Daily Norseman as well for more Vikings content. So thank you for listening to our show today, and we will catch you guys later on this week.